Yeah. Well, I'm
Yes.
trying to connect myself.
Mhm.
I'm trying to connect with my. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I do. Perfect.
We are in the 7th session of the Bithynia conference. Ergün Laflı is going to speak about martyrological, hagiographical, and patrological studies of Nicomedia. We are listening you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very short introduction, and thank you for helping me for so intensively from the beginning, from the early in the morning up to 8 o'clock. Such an ambitious project. Anyways, just want to first apologize for this long title and for this long, I will say, plan, which I actually abridged to a little bit. And I will just also try to sum up as much as possible. Well, I can tell you, I got only 5 pages that I'm going to read out with 20 slides. So I hope that you will enjoy it, and I hope that you will just ask me questions at the end. First of all, do you guys see my PowerPoint presentation? Gözüküyor mu Gülseren?
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
It's perfect.
So I can begin with that then. We know what our conference is being called very well. Yeah. Well, what we're going to do is that now I'm going to, as Gülseren has already announced, it's going to be about Turkish, let me just put it down here, Turkish martyrological, hagiographical, and patrological studies of Nicomedia. Well, let me just begin. All we know very well that we have lots of Christian insignificant figures from Nicomedia, today's myths, both in antiquity and in early Byzantine period. For example, Arianos, the author of the book Alexander's Expedition, or Menedotos, 2nd century AD, who was affiliated with the skepticism school of applied medicine and is accepted as the person who developed the first scientific observation method from Nicomedia. So I mean here that already in the Hellenistic and Roman period, we know numerous people from numerous Greek and Roman scholars and authors or historians or significant figures from Nicomedia. So Nicomedia was a place with several important personalities for whole Greek and Roman antiquity, both in Hellenistic and Roman periods. But with the spread of Christianity, especially in the 3rd century AD, and in the 2nd century, of course, until the middle of 4th century, the city has been just sort of switched in a different role, in a different position. And it became sort of a place for pagans who were persecuted, and for Christians who were persecuted by the Roman paganist rulers, especially because they chose Christianity and became hero martyr. So it is still basically a center for hero martyroi of the early Christian Christianity or early Christian religionism. Well, many religious personalities who have been raised to the rank of religious martyrs are introduced in the city. So much so that the Roman Emperor Diocletian, who was elected as an emperor in 248, and he personally resided in Nicomedia, and we know that at that time, almost half population of this town and the area around it was Christian. About these hero martyr, the most important source is the text of Lactantius that all we know very well. Luciu Pecili liber ad donum confessorem de mortibus persecutorum, which is very important for us because he's basically reporting about this whole thing, more or less. And the rest of the literary evidences in the later periods are actually reflecting more or less what Lactantius says or what Lactantius reports. So it's Lactantius is one of the first-hand source for this particular period and this particular particular well, I'm trying to, first of all, I will just try to, sorry, maybe I will try also do the thing, because somebody is just saying, maybe I should do it like whole screen. I should try to make it, but I'm sorry if I cannot make it. I'm trying. How is it right now? The thing, the slides. I'm trying to make it whole screen. Is it better that way now? Is it better that way? Do you think?
Yes, yes, of course.
More or less, more or less. Well, let me just maybe I should go again, because I need to also read my text. I'm sorry about that. I'm really sorry about this. So you should just try to follow the presentation like this. Anyway, so which emperor were dominating in Nicomedia during this period, when the pagans, when the Christians were killed by pagans? That were Diocletian, Maximianus, Galerius, and Maximinus. These four emperors. That was also the time for Lactantius at that time. The reason why the martyr stories about Nicomedia between 250 to 350 were so intense was, for me, according to me, was because of the dense population of the city, which was a regional and continental capital. And Nicomedia was itself administrative and military center for whole Roman Empire, not only for the eastern part. So in this period, Nicomedia was also a prime stop for a prime station for Christianity, and so it was also the point that the Eastern Christianity has been sort of not begun but strengthened. We have several, evidences for that. Good. For these reasons, Nicomedia is very important for the for patrology or patristics and for church fathers. In this period, the Roman paganism was opposed and the Christian faith was defended, and Christian faith was understood and strengthened. Thus, it was tried to be protected against the attacks of paganism and Gnosticism. The bishops or priests of these spiritual martyrs who died in Nicomedia during this period are called, as all we know very well, hieromartyr in Eastern Orthodoxy. Now I would like to just present their lives, and just summarize them chronologically as much as I can. Well, the first figure is here, Saint Panteleimon. We know him very well from the early Christian period and Nicomedian personality in a Roman period. But this is a later depiction of him from the 10th, 11th century AD, and I think one of the earliest depiction of Panteleimon, which is today, I think, in Baltimore, in Walter's Alt Gallery. This one is a very interesting one, actually, a terracotta depiction, which is actually very unique. But we believe that it's the product of Nicaea or Nicomedia, as you have already seen in the previous lecture, that this type of tiles were just very common in this part of Asia Minor. And also we know several stories about, for instance, Saint Constantine and Saint Helena that are connected with, of course, with the history of Nicomedia in the early 4th century. So we know several personalities. I just want to give two important examples here. So let me start with Constantine first. One of the numerous persecution of pagans emperors before the Roman Emperor Constantine were especially in the time of Decius at 249 to 251, if I'm not wrong. And this time was especially brutal and bloody. Decius recruited especially 370 Christians from Nicomedia who had previously been imprisoned, worship in the temple of Isis. When they refused to do so, he had them all beheaded. Paramon and his 370 disciples who saw this massacre after being tortured, was killed in front of the Roman governor in 250 AD. So that was one of the most remarkable history of the early Christianity of Nicomedia. Lucilianus, who lived during the Roman Emperor Aurelianus, spent most of his life as a pagan priest. But then finally he recognized Christianity at an advanced age and then was baptized. Thereupon he was brought to the court in Nicomedia. After the interrupted tortures, he was imprisoned with 4 young Christians, Claudius, Hypatius, Paulus, and Dionysius, who would be considered almost children. When these 5 people were brought before Silvanus, the governor of that time, perhaps of Bithynia or Nicomedia, we are not very sure about Silvanus. All 5 of them revealed their beliefs and were subsequently sentenced to death. When they miraculously escaped unharmed, they were sent to Istanbul and killed together with Virgin Paula. A church was later built in Istanbul in honor of this martyred clergy. Martyr spiritual Theopemptos of Nicomedia was the bishop of Nicomedia during the period of Diocletian. Maybe I have a picture of him. I think here, Theopemptos, yes. Well, Theopemptos, his name is Theopemptos. He was a martyr, and he was the bishop of Nicomedia during the period of Diocletian. Theopemptos or even Theopempos, both are possible because in written sources, they reflect his name in both forms, is recognized in literature as one of the first spiritual martyrs of the Diocletian Nicomedia at the end of 3rd century. So he was one of the first. Theopemptos, who miraculously survived the persecution he suffered, was eventually killed by beheading. Let me also use a few words about that. Most of those martyrs, hero martyrs, are being reflected actually in Menologion of Basileus II in around AD 1000. So Menologion of Basileus is one of the first source, iconographic source, a visual source for us for reconstruction of those martyrs from Nicomedia. This is therefore important because it supports the literary Christian evidence through this visuality in a very late period, actually, after, I would say, 600, 700 years later than these executions, right? So let me go to the other one. And Anikitos, who was one of the governors of the city during the rule of Emperor Diocletian, who came to the region to start torture against the Christians in Nicomedia, refused to worship pagan gods and announced that he was a member of the Christian faith. He was then subjected to a series of tortures. During these tortures, Anikitos' nephew, Photios, ran to his uncle and told the emperor that he was a Christian too. After many tortures, they were both imprisoned for 3 years. The Saint Martyr Aganotikos, who lived in Nicomedia in the 3rd century, was also a pagan, then became a Christian. For this reason, he and some of his friends, for instance, the philosopher Zotikos, Theorepius, Acunidos, Severianus, and Zenon from Bithynia, were captured, beaten, wounded, and taken to Istanbul. I think I got a picture of them, more or less, one of them at least, maybe it's one of those, sorry for my confusion with this. Taken to Istanbul. On the way, some of Agonitikos' friends died because of the cruel treatment. Those who survived were deported to Selembria or Celebria, today's Silivri in Turkey, including Agonitikos. After being tortured here in front of the emperor, at the end of the 3rd century, their heads were cut off. A church was built in Istanbul for these saintly martyred clergy. It is believed that Flavius, one of the bishops of Nicomedia, was martyred together with these 4 people in around 300 AD. So I think that this one is one of the visual representation of these tortures, again in Menologion. With combined different personalities from different periods and from different events in one single picture, right? Well, we have another story. We have a group of people that we call Christian martyrs as 20,000 martyr spirits of Nicomedia during the Roman emperors Diocletian and Maximianus at the end of 3rd century and beginning of 4th century, very early 4th century. In AD 303, on the feast of Nativity of Jesus, people who were burned alive and sacrificed in the church because they were Christians were tortured too. The early Christian historian Eusebius states in his book, in his History of the Church, in his book History of the Church, that some of the Christians in Nicomedia at that time were killed by the sword, and others were burned alive, and some men and women were gradually destroyed. He also stated that women throw themselves into the fire with an inexplicable divine zeal. The traditional feast of 20,000 martyr spirits of Nicomedia in churches is on December 28th. So in Orthodox Church, this has been recognized. Here I have a picture of it, actually. I'm sorry that for the confusion. I meant this one, actually, which is 20,000 hero martyroi of Nicomedia, which is again reflected in Monologion of Basileus II in the beginning of AD 1000. That's a nice picture of it, actually, nice depiction of it. Well, let me come to slide number 7 with this one. Based on the narratives of Eusebius, Anthimos of Nicomedia was another bishop of the city during the Diocletian period. The first church of the city was destroyed on February 23, AD 303. After the destruction of this church and the deaths of these 20,000 martyrs spirits of Nicomedia, Anthimos fled to the village of Omana in the region to deal with the remaining Christian followers of the city. Thereupon, he is searched by the Roman soldiers, captured who captured Anthemius bravely, who confessed his faith in front of the emperor after suffering terrible tortures. He was then killed by beheading in around AD 303 or 4, immediately after the Battle of Tsiziralon, today Çorlu in Turkish Thrace. In AD 313, Emperor Maximus II Daria himself fled to Nicomedia and from there to Tarsus. So in some queries, in some literature sources, in religious sources, these two things are trying to be connected to each other. The Battle of Trasilon and the travel of Maximus to Nicomedia, and the death of Anthimos in 303. And if I just count them, there are like only 10 years between these two events of early Christianity. Yeah, so we have here also one depiction of this, of Anthimos, the bishop of Nicomedia, with other saintly martyred clergy. It's a long list. I don't want to just read them. It's going to be taking long, but Diakon Theophilos is a remarkable one, actually. Now let me come to Hagios Georgios, Saint George. One of the most important saints associated with Nicomedia is undoubtedly Saint George, who was known as great martyr and victorious Saint Hagia Georgios in Orthodoxy, or Ayayorgi in Turkish, which is actually also common in Turkish literature. He's one of the best known disciples of Jesus. The narratives about the spiritual are quite dense and complex. We know a lot of sources, a lot of different stories about him, especially the narratives about the operation and suffering are quite numerous, about his beliefs, his faiths, and his torture, and lots of different stories are connected to his life. Well, let me just show you one slide about this personality. This is St. George slaying the dragon, very common, very famous, a Greek icon depicting him. I have taken this picture in the Museum of Trabzon, very far away from Nicomedia, but it's an interesting piece. But I got another piece here, a fragment of a pediment of I think a Greek Orthodox church with Angel Michael in the middle of the pediment, divided into 3 arches, and depiction of Saint George killing the dragon on the left side here. It is dated to March 1839, and it is now today in the Museum of Alanya in in Eastern Cilicia and Western Pamphylia. Well, it is believed that Georgios, one of the most revered saints in Christianity, was a soldier under Emperor Diocletian in Nicomedia in his late 20s. When he was asked to convert from Christianity on April 23 to 303, it is rumored that he was beheaded by Emperor Diocletian in front of the walls of Nicomedia because he did not accept this. So this is very interesting, actually, to know that he has been sort of executed in front of the walls of Nicomedia. This is a very interesting point for us for the future research to find out where it has occurred exactly. Well, the other saint is again a very famous one, Saint Panteleimon, who was one of the clergy from Nicomedia who was martyred in the executions of Diocletian again in AD 304. The Greek word Panteleimon means very compassionate. He was born in Sakaria in Bithynia in AD 271, so late 3rd century. It is believed that this cleric had a wealthy pagan father named Aestorgios and was introduced to Christianity by his mother, Saint Eubula. After Panteleimone's father taught him the Greek language, he sent Panteleimon to Ephrosinios, one of the physicians of the time, to learn medicine. I got another thing. Well, this is a nice, actually, fresco. I think it's from the 12th century, I think. Or not 12th century, but the church is from the 12th century in Nerezi in Macedonia. And it's a very clear depiction of Panteleimon. Normally, Panteleimon is not very common on frescoes. He's rather common on Greek icons. This is the picture that I have taken on Chios in Greece, a local icon from 1973. A modern icon done by Chaotic Greek in Chios, depicting Saint Panteleimon with his surgical items and surgical objects. So Panteleimon later became the personal physician of Emperor Maximianus or Galerius, one of them. Although he continued his life as a pagan faith during this period, he was converted to Christianity after a series of events by Saint Hermolaus, the bishop of Nicomedia. However, later on, Saint Martyr spiritual Hermolaus was arrested and beheaded along with other saints, Hermippos and Hermocrates. I have actually checked this both in different sources, Christian sources, early sources, and there are very few remarks about this too, because I was actually sort of interested about their names, about their onomastics, especially Hermippos, which reminds me of some earlier names, but didn't find much about them. After he became a Christian, Panteleimon, who distributed his legacy to the church and continued his profession as a physician. It is believed that he performed many miracles during this time. Panteleimon's relics, who were subjected to various tortures after his death, were moved from Nicomedia to Istanbul after his death. In some sources, it is rumored that Panteleimon lived after these persecutions. There are some Russian sources actually telling about that. Good. Let me go to the other slide. We have another personality, a lady this time, Saint Martyr spiritual Barbara, one of the most well-known saints in Christianity, is believed to be from Nicomedia. However, there are rumors that she was martyred in places such as in Rome or in Antioch on the Orontes. It is believed that she was destroyed by lightning bolts sent by God while she was going to be cut to death by her father for choosing Christianity. Barbara was murdered with a woman named Juliana, who was impressed by seeing her angel persecution and converted to Christianity. Her relics in Istanbul and in the 12th century AD, they were brought to St. Michael's Golden Dome Monastery in Kiev, in Ukraine, and from there to St. Vladimir's Cathedral in Kiev, again in 1930s. There is a place in Izmit today, in Nicomedia, in Kocaeli, where the castle has one singular vault, which is believed by the locals as the place where the saint was killed. So they sort of worship this place and sort of preserved, isolated it, and it has been even consecrated by the Patriarch in Istanbul lately, and now being sort of visited by several Christians. Holy martyr Juliana of Nicomedia was also a big important religious figure, killed during the executions of Diocletian in 304. Juliana was born to a wealthy family in Nicomedia during the reign of Emperor Maximianus. She was engaged to a pagan named Eleusios, for whom I couldn't really find much, who was a senator and later rose to the position of governor of Nicomedia. After being subjected to various tortures by Eleusios, who was enraged for refusing to marry Eleusios, she was beheaded at the age of 18, together with Saint Barbara. Later, a noble woman named Sephonia took the body of the saint and buried it in Campania in Italy. So in the 13th century, her relics were moved to Naples. I was able to see them, not all of them, but a part of them, but just in the recent years. And it's very remarkable because I also checked the name Sephonia, and it seems that it's a Semitic name. Yes, let me come to another personality. Here is Barbara. I'm sorry, I didn't really show this slide. I'm sorry about this. Saint Barbara of Nicomedia with Saint Juliana and Saint Paraskevi of Iconium on a Russian icon from the 14th to 15th century AD. Now, let me just come to Holy Bishop Martyr Cyprianus and Holy Virgin Martyr Justina. They are both from Syria. After accepting Christianity, Cyprianus went through many persecutions and was sent to Emperor Diocletian, who was in Nicomedia. They were killed by beheading in AD 304. Saint Vasilisa lived near Nicomedia during the reign of Emperor Diocletian. Although she was only 9 years old, she was caught and brought before Alexandros, the governor of Bithynia. She was being subjected to various persecutions. However, she miraculously survived these persecutions. According to Christian narratives, it is believed that Saint Vasilisa was thrown into an oven, and then she's made a cross, and so that the fire never touched her. The governor of the period converted to Christianity through Saint Vasilisa too. Vasilisa died while she was going to a place outside of the city of Nicomedia and giving thanks to God. There is another story. So this is Cyprianus and Saint Justina on a Bulgarian icon. It's an anonymous icon of the 19th century for the Church of Saint Kyrillos and Methodios in Slivnica in Bulgaria. Now we have another saint with this wooden statue from Belgium, actually from Ghent, which is Saint Adrian of Nicomedia, known by the name Adrian, was a senior soldier in Nicomedian Praetorium during the reign of Emperor Maximianus. His wife, Anatolia, and their families were both wealthy and noble in the city of Nicomedia. Adrianus had a pagan faith. His wife, Natalia, was a secret Christian. When Emperor Maximian visited Nicomedia, he ordered that all Christians in the city be arrested and tortured. At this time, there were 23 Christians at the time of Maximianus, hidden in a cave close to the city. We have no idea where this cave is all about. Adrianus, who was influenced by these betrayed people, chose Christianity. According to Christian narratives, Adrianus and other 23 people were tortured at that time. They breathed their last in Nicomedia on March 4, 306. After that, Adrianus' wife, Natalia, took their bodies to Istanbul and then buried them there. And this wooden statue, which is actually very typical from the second half of the 19th century, is reflecting him in a Catholic sense. Yeah, the other one is Eulampios or Eulambios, yes, and his sister Eulampia. This is an amazing name, Eulampios and Eulampia. They are actually, brothers and sisters. They were subjected to various persecutions during the period of Maximianus in AD 296, and they were killed by beheading in 310. 200 soldiers who witnessed the miracles that took place during the tortures of Eulampius and his sister Eulampia were also Christians and were later killed and then considered also as saints, these 200 Roman soldiers. And here in Menologion, we have their beheading, again, from the early 11th century. Now, the next person is Lucianus, who was born actually in Samosata in Comagene in around AD 240s, I guess. Arius, who was one of the main actors of Arian dispute that shook the Christian world of the 4th century and caused the first ecumenical council of the church to convene, and his biggest supporter, Eusebius of Nicomedia, the Patriarch of Istanbul, were the students of Lucianus, who went to Nicomedia to encourage the Christian followers of Samosata. But there he complained to Maximianus. Thereupon, he was imprisoned and died of hunger and thirst in prison on January 7, 312, which is actually today celebration day for Lucianus. Let me just check him here. Yeah, here we have his depiction in the Menologion. He accompanied Saint Peter, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus, and declared Prochoros, bishop of Nicomedia. A diakon is a person who was the rank of a diakon, who was in the first step of 3 higher clergy degrees in Orthodox Church. Olympia was also a saint from Istanbul. She was appointed as a diakon by Nectorius, who was the patriarch, again, at the end of 4th century. After the exile of Johannes Chrysostomos, at the end of the 4th century, the Archbishop of Istanbul, and an important church father, he was imprisoned in Nicomedia in early 5th century and died around AD 409. Here we have a depiction of Apostle John, St. Prochorus of Nicomedia, on an Armenian manuscript with Bible, dated to 1609 from Bodleian Library in Oxford. Let me just tell some words about Saint Theophlactos, the Bishop of Nicomedia, who was originally from the sites from some cities in the eastern part of Byzantine territory. He was basically an Oriental person, but this and his birth city, the city of his birth, is unknown. He took part in the iconoclasm moment, an anti-religious depiction moment that lasted from the first quarter of the 8th century to the middle of 9th century AD, and then went to the Strobilos castle Aspat in today Bodrum in Karya during the reign of Emperor Leo V, and was exiled, and then as a result of 30 years of imprisonment and difficult condition, he died around 750. Between Saint Theophlactos, this is a depiction of him, the Bishop of Nicomedia in the 9th century. This is an actual depiction from Yapandi Church in Hydra in Saronic Islands in Greece. Between these two, between the hero martyrs of early 4th century to Saint Theophlactos, there is a gap of, I would say, 350 years. So after mid 9th century, the number of saints from Nicomedia are being sort of larger than the previous periods. The next one is actually a Byzantine thinker, theologian, writer, and statesman, Michael Psellos, from the 11th century AD, arguing that Platonist philosophy can be integrated with Christian teachings and supported the Byzantine ideal world with Istanbul Patriarch of Photios I. He is known as a person who opposed to Aristotelian thought introduced in the 9th century and pioneered the revival of Byzantine classical education that would later influence the Italian Renaissance even. It is recorded in some sources that he was born in Nicomedia, so it's not really sure the connection, his relation to Nicomedia. But we estimate that Michael Psellos could be Bithynian or could be Nicomedian. In the 13th century, Greek Orthodox theologian and scholar Maximus Plades translated Latin philosophical and literary classics and Arabic mathematical works into Greek, and making these areas known in Byzantine cultural world. He was born in Plaunides, close to Nicomedia. So he was basically Nicomedian, Maximus Plaunides. I'm sorry, I couldn't really find any image for Maximus Plaunides. And the last personality is in the 14th century, who is actually a Karaim Jewish philosopher, Aaron ben Elia, called Ketat Torah or Gan Eden or Etz Hayim, in Hebrew, Tree of Life. He was a local philosopher of Nicomedia. He was born in there, but he then spent most of his life in Istanbul, and he was one of the earliest Jewish philosopher of Anatolian territory in the late medieval period, who was also connected with Nicomedia. So, as a conclusion, I would like to say, in the late 3rd and the early 4th century, we have a huge number of saints and other religious personalities reported from Nicomedia by several Christian sources. And after mid-9th century, it started again to see that typology, that type of personalities. But then this goes up to the 14th century, and thus we can say that Nicomedia had a great role in the direction of Christianity. And thus, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you for important presentation. Dear participants, do you have any question about all of the presentation?
So everything was so clear.
Yes. This session is finished. Of course.
Great. Great. So Gülseren, when should we begin again? When should we begin again? Ne zaman başlayalım? Because we got one more session. We have one more session. We're all tired, but we have one more session.
Our session is finished.
Yeah, well, we finish again and at 9:10. At 9:10,
Okay.
is it okay?
Okay, it's okay.
At 9:10, we will finish again. We will start again, right? Thank you.